The tension regarding the role of sociology can be understood by the different ways in which sociological roles have developed. Basic sociology focuses on gaining knowledge. Applied sociology is used to solve problems, while public sociology uses the sociological perspective for the benefit of society. While many sociologists advocate for change and social reform, one must also recognize that there can be at least some wisdom in tradition and the status quo. Social change can dismantle the social structure, and it's not often rebuilt very quickly. Our social world has emerged over thousands of years, and rebuilding a social structure takes time and at least some degree of social agreement to rebuild that structure. This slide allows us, at a glance, to think about the various roles of basic, public, and applied sociology. Each one has a different focus as its main role. Either understanding society, guiding policies, or creating and implementing solutions. Depending on the person's role in society, they may gravitate towards one or the other. For instance, a researcher who's more interested in theory building might be more interested in basic sociology. But a researcher who evaluates the effectiveness of programs might be more interested in applied sociology. We turn now to a different aspect of our introduction to sociology. We'll be talking a bit about the different theoretical paradigms in sociology. The main theoretical paradigms are functional analysis, conflict theory, and symbolic interaction. Each one of these has a different perspective. Depending on which paradigm you're using, your theoretical model would be built differently because each has different basic premises. So you could study the same social issue but use a different theoretical paradigm to guide the theories you choose to test. Also, understand that there are micro and macro perspectives. Micro perspectives look at issues at a more individual level, while macro perspectives consider a more global or a broader view of society. Another basic premise is that the theory will guide the entire research effort. So, whichever paradigm your theory fits into, that's going to guide the research. And of course, a theory is a general statement about how some parts of the world fit together and how they work. An explanation of how two or more facts are related to one another. Symbolic interactionism is based on the idea that symbols, things to which we attach meaning, are the key to understanding how we view the world and communicate with one another. Symbolic interactionists analyze how social life depends on the ways we define ourselves and others. They study face-to-face interaction, examining how people make sense out of life and their place in it. So think about the meaning of marriage, or the meaning of divorce, or the meaning of parenthood. Now question how our social construction of those meanings and what we think of those concepts mean, and then how that guides us. Without marriage, how do we define the structure of a family? What purpose does marriage serve for society? And why is the meaning so important to the structure of society? And then how does it define our own behaviors? Why do we do weddings and make them such big ones? These are all questions a symbolic interactionist might ask and then study. means theory of the emergence of mind and self out of the social process of significant communication has become the foundation of the symbolic interactionist school of sociology and social psychology. Symbolic interaction is a microtheory. It's studied at the individual level. This chart from our texts help us understand how society might shift the way it thinks about an aspect of social life, such as marriage. Take a look at the y-axis regarding how the different aspects have shifted over time. In the olden days, what we would call traditional marriage emphasized duties, whereas in contemporary marriage, the higher importance is feelings. How did this shift happen? What is the process by which this change took place? And how do we sustain the agreement that feelings are more important than duties and obligations? These might be questions a symbolic interactionist would be drawn to. Functionalist theory would see the different parts of society, i.e., the different social institutions that serve society, as all serving specific purposes for society to function properly. The social institution of education, religion, family, medicine, the media, they would each be seen as having a purpose in society, and that for society to be healthy and function properly, those functions must be met. You might want to think of it in terms of an analogy to the human body. We all have organs that meet specific needs. The heart, lungs, digestive system, skin, kidneys, they all have specific functions which need to be performed for the body to be healthy. If one organ fails or does not function well, the whole body is affected. So the analogy to society is that if one of the social institutions does not perform its job correctly, say education or the family or medicine, then society as a whole may not thrive. Functionalist theory assumes that things are a certain way because they benefit society. Robert Merton thought that functionalism was the best theory for understanding society. Functionalists would consider how society changes and how things like the Industrial Revolution and urbanization may have undermined the traditional functions of the family. The family, which is a major social institution, developed norms, roles, and traditions that were highly functional for hundreds of years. When industrialization and urbanization changed the roles, then the norms changed, and tradition did not serve the family or society quite as well. This then leads to dysfunction. For instance, the weakening of family ties. Conflict theory would focus instead on the divisions in society and the struggles between groups for power, whether it be economic, social, or political power. This theory was developed by Karl Marx as he watched the changes occurring in the cities due to the Industrial Revolution. Conflict theory is rooted in economics. The idea that the means of production controls who has what power in society, and that our life opportunities are dependent on our access to resources. There's a basic premise that groups that are in power don't want much change because threatening the status quo threatens their advantage in society. Conflict theory became popular in the 1960s because it became apparent that other theories, such as functionalism and symbolic interaction, did not adequately explain the strife and the social discord that was occurring during the U.S. Civil Rights Movement. It's popular with groups that have subordinate status, such as feminists, because it relies first and foremost on the power differentials between groups and allows us to examine social structure relative to life opportunities. The main point here is that each group has a lens, a way of seeing the world. Symbolic interaction looks at the individual level and how meaning is created. Functionalists look at what society needs to function properly. And conflict theory looks at dominant and subordinate group relationships and the resources that those groups have. It's important to understand the difference between the macro and the micro levels too. Functionalists and conflict theorists focus on the macro level. That is, they examine large-scale patterns of society. In contrast, symbolic interactionists usually focus on the micro level, on social interaction, what people do when they're in one another's presence. So one way to describe the differences is that macro sociology refers to sociological approaches and methods that examine large-scale patterns and trends within the overall social structure, the social system, and the population. Often, macro sociology is theoretical in nature too. On the other hand, micro sociology focuses on smaller groups, patterns and trends, typically at the community level and in the context of everyday lives and experiences of people. People sometimes think these two approaches conflict with each other, but that's not exactly true. You could say that these are complementary approaches because, at its core, sociology is about understanding the way large-scale patterns and trends shape the lives and experiences of groups and individuals, and vice versa. So having a sense of both approaches is really helpful.